Betrayed by her boyfriend, she catches the eye of his powerful boss. As romance sparks, will revenge lead to true love? And if you cherish your family and love videos like this, subscribe to our channel to have 10 years of luck in your life. The evening air in Seoul was crisp when Jisoo first saw them through the restaurant window. Her boyfriend of 3 years, Jae-won, sat intimately close to another woman at a corner table of an upscale restaurant in Gangnam. Jisoo stood frozen on the sidewalk, her hand still clutching her phone with the unread message from Jae-won claiming he was working late. The woman laughed at something he said, touching his arm in a gesture that spoke of familiarity and comfort. Jisoo's stomach lurched as she watched Jae-won lean in closer, his hand covering the woman's on the table. The scene before her dismantled 3 years of trust in mere seconds. She'd walked this route home from work hundreds of times, but tonight's accidental discovery shattered her entire world. Rather than confront them, Jisoo turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. The following Monday marked her first day as assistant to CEO Sung-jae at Seoul's leading design firm. Despite the emotional turmoil of the weekend, Jisoo forced herself to focus on her new position. She arrived early, determined to prove herself worthy of the promotion. The office buzzed with activity as employees prepared for the morning meeting. Sung-jae's entrance transformed the atmosphere instantly. He moved through the office with natural authority, greeting each team member by name. Jisoo observed how he stopped at different desks, discussing ongoing projects with genuine interest. His leadership style wasn't based on intimidation but on mutual respect and engagement. During the team meeting, Jisoo watched Sung-jae masterfully handle various concerns and suggestions from the staff. He didn't dismiss anyone's input, instead creating an environment where ideas could flow freely. This was a stark contrast to her previous experiences, where hierarchy often stifled creativity. Despite her personal turmoil, Jisoo found herself drawn to this new professional dynamic. The week progressed, and Jisoo threw herself into her work, grateful for the distraction from her personal life. She carefully organized Sung-jae's schedule, prepared comprehensive briefings for his meetings, and began adding her own creative touches to project presentations. Her attention to detail didn't go unnoticed. During Friday's project review, Sung-jae specifically highlighted Jisoo's contributions. The visual elements Jisoo added to the Chun Group proposal significantly strengthened our presentation, he announced to the team. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. The praise caught Jisoo off guard. She'd been so focused on simply surviving each day that she hadn't realized the impact of her work. For the first time since discovering Jae-won's betrayal, she felt a flicker of pride. The warmth of professional recognition began to thaw the cold numbness that had settled in her chest since that night. As the team dispersed after the meeting, Sung-jae approached her desk. "I mean what I said about your work, Jisoo. You have a unique perspective that could be valuable to this company. I look forward to seeing more of your ideas." His words were professional, but his genuine interest in her potential created a new sense of possibility. Jisoo realized that while one part of her life had crumbled, another was beginning to take shape. The office suddenly felt like a place where she could rebuild herself, away from the shadows of betrayal. That evening, as Jisoo packed up her desk, she noticed she'd gone a full day without checking her phone for messages from Jae-won. The pain was still there, but it had shifted from a sharp stab to a dull ache. Her new role, Sung-jae's leadership, and the creative challenges ahead offered something she'd desperately needed: hope. The major project landed on Jisoo's desk 3 weeks into her new position. A complete rebranding initiative for a prominent tech company that could establish their design firm as an industry leader. Jisoo immersed herself in the work, staying late at the office to refine her concepts. The creative process provided a welcome escape from her personal turmoil. During one late evening, as she worked on the design mock-ups, Sung-jae appeared at her desk with 2 cups of coffee. "Your dedication is impressive," he said, placing 1 cup beside her computer. "But don't forget to take care of yourself." The gesture was simple but meaningful, showing a level of consideration Jisoo hadn't expected from a CEO. The project allowed Jisoo's creativity to flourish in unexpected ways. She proposed an innovative approach that merged traditional Korean design elements with modern tech aesthetics. During a presentation to the executive team, Sung-jae gave her the floor to explain her concept. His trust in her abilities made her stand taller, speak more confidently. "This is exactly what we needed," Sung-jae declared after her presentation. "Jisoo has captured something unique here." The other executives nodded in agreement, and for a moment, Jisoo felt truly seen for her professional capabilities rather than her past. However, the high of professional success came crashing down the next morning. An anonymous email waited in her inbox. "Jaewon isn't finished with you. He's planning something that will destroy everything you're building." The message sent a chill through her body. She'd been so focused on moving forward that she'd almost forgotten about the threat her ex-boyfriend posed. The email's timing couldn't have been worse. Jisoo had just begun to feel secure in her new role, and now the shadow of her past threatened to undermine everything. She tried to focus on work, but her hands trembled slightly as she typed, her mind racing with possibilities of what Jaewon might do. Sung-jae noticed the change in her demeanor during their afternoon meeting. Her usual sharp attention to detail wavered, and her responses lacked their typical confidence. After the meeting, he asked her to stay behind. "Something's troubling you," he said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. His direct approach caught Jisoo off guard. In the quiet of the conference room, Sung-jae's usual commanding presence softened. "I've learned that the best way to handle problems is to face them head-on. Whatever it is, you don't have to deal with it alone." Jisoo hesitated, then pulled up the anonymous email on her phone. As Sung-jae read it, she saw something shift in his expression, a mixture of concern and something else she couldn't quite identify. "Has this happened before?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. She explained about Jaewon, the betrayal, and her fears about what he might do to sabotage her new life. As she spoke, Sung-jae listened intently, his usual business-like demeanor giving way to genuine concern. "The company has resources to handle situations like this," he assured her. "We protect our own." That evening, Sung-jae insisted on walking Jisoo to her car. As they crossed the parking garage, he shared his own story of overcoming personal betrayal early in his career. "It nearly broke me," he admitted, "but it also taught me the importance of having people you can trust around you." The vulnerability in his confession surprised Jisoo. She'd always seen Sung-jae as untouchable, a figure of unwavering strength. Realizing he had his own battles and scars made him more human, more approachable. His openness created a space where her own fears felt less overwhelming. Before she got into her car, Sung-jae handed her his personal card with his private number written on the back. "If anything happens, anything at all, call me. Day or night." The gesture carried weight beyond professional courtesy. It was a promise of protection, of support. The cafe, where Jisoo arranged to meet Jaewon, was deliberately public. She chose a table near the window, where other patrons could easily see them. When Jaewon walked in, his familiar confident stride now made her stomach turn rather than flutter, as it once had. "You look good," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "The new job must be treating you well." His tone carried an undercurrent of mockery that Jisoo wouldn't have noticed 3 months ago. She sat straight, hands wrapped around her untouched coffee cup. "Why are you doing this?" she asked directly, cutting through his attempt at small talk. "The anonymous messages, the threats. What do you want?" Jaewon's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "I'm hurt that you'd think I'm threatening you," he replied smoothly. "I'm just looking out for you. After all, we have history." He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. "What happened between us? It wasn't that serious. You're overreacting like always." Jisoo felt a surge of anger replace her fear. "Not serious? You cheated on me for months. You lied to my face every day. And now you're trying to sabotage my career." Her voice remained steady, even as her hands trembled under the table. "Sabotage is a strong word." Jaewon leaned back, his facade cracking slightly. "I'm simply making sure people know who you really are. Your new CEO friend should understand what he's getting into." The mention of Sung-jae made Jisoo's spine stiffen. "Stay away from my work," she warned. "What happened between us is over. I won't let you control my life anymore." Later that week, during a company gala event, Jisoo found herself standing next to Sung-jae on the rooftop terrace. The Seoul skyline glittered behind them as other guests mingled inside. She'd just finished presenting their successful rebranding project to the board members. "You handled yourself brilliantly in there," Sung-jae said, offering her a glass of champagne. "You've come a long way in a short time." The night air carried the hint of approaching autumn, and Jisoo felt oddly at peace despite the week's earlier confrontation. "I had good support," she replied, glancing at him. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Sung-jae stepped closer, their shoulders nearly touching as they looked out over the city. "The view up here helps put things in perspective," he said softly. "Problems that seem overwhelming at ground level look different from above." His words carried a double meaning that wasn't lost on Jisoo. The moment was interrupted by Jisoo's phone buzzing. A notification showed she'd been tagged in multiple social media posts. Her heart sank as she opened them, photos of her and Sung-jae from various work events, but with captions implying an inappropriate relationship. Comments were already flooding in, questioning her rapid promotion and professional integrity. Sung-jae saw the posts over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. "This is crossing a line," he said, his voice carrying an edge she'd never heard before. "We need to address this immediately." Inside, the gala continued, but Jisoo felt exposed, vulnerable. The carefully constructed professional image she'd built was being twisted into something tawdry. Sung-jae guided her to a private office, immediately making calls to the company's PR team. "We're not going to let him win," Sung-jae assured her, his hand briefly touching her shoulder. "But I need you to trust me completely."
Can you do that?
Jisoo looked at him, seeing not just her CEO but someone who had become an unexpected ally in her fight. "Yes," she answered, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I trust you." Sung-jae's dedication to helping Jisoo manifested in concrete actions. He called an emergency meeting with the company's legal team and senior management, laying out the systematic harassment she'd been facing. "This isn't just about ProTech. Ting one employee," he declared, standing at the head of the conference table. "It's about setting a precedent for how we handle bullying and harassment in our industry." The support from her company emboldened Jisoo. Rather than shrinking from the controversy, she threw herself into a new initiative, a design project aimed at helping underprivileged communities. The project involved creating visual campaigns for local nonprofits, offering pro bono design services to organizations that couldn't afford professional branding. During one planning session, Jisoo presented her concept to Sung-jae. "These organizations have powerful stories," she explained, displaying mock-ups on the conference room screen. "They just need help telling them effectively." Sung-jae watched her with undisguised admiration as she walked through her proposals. "This isn't just good design," he commented, studying the presentations. "This is about transformation, giving voices to those who haven't been heard." His understanding of her vision made Jisoo's confidence soar. The project became more than just work. It became her personal mission. The first organization they partnered with was a women's shelter. Jisoo spent hours interviewing the staff, understanding their needs, and crafting a campaign that would resonate with both donors and those seeking help. Her personal experience with emotional manipulation gave her unique insight into how to communicate with vulnerability and strength. During this time, Sung-jae's leadership style continued to impress the team. He didn't just delegate tasks, he actively participated in brainstorming sessions, offered constructive feedback, and celebrated small victories. His approach created an atmosphere where creativity flourished and team members felt valued. In one particularly successful presentation to a nonprofit board, Jisoo's work received a standing ovation. The campaign she designed would help the organization double its outreach capacity. As the board members filed out, Sung-jae remained behind. "You've found your voice," he told her, his pride evident. "These projects, they're not just changing these organizations. They're changing you too." His observations struck Jisoo deeply. She realized he was right. Through helping others, she was healing herself. The team's success attracted attention within the industry. Other companies began reaching out, wanting to partner on similar social impact initiatives. Jisoo found herself leading meetings with potential partners, her confidence growing with each presentation. During one such meeting, a senior executive from another firm asked about the inspiration behind the campaign. Jisoo spoke honestly about the power of rebuilding after personal setbacks. Though she didn't mention Jaewon specifically, Sungjae, sitting beside her, squeezed her hand briefly under the table, a gesture of support and understanding. After the meeting, walking back to their office, Sungjae turned to her. "You know what makes these projects special?" he asked. "They're authentic. You're not just designing. You're sharing your story of resilience. That's why people connect with them." His words made Jisoo pause. She'd been so focused on moving forward that she hadn't realized how much her past experiences were informing her present success. The pain Jaewon caused hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something constructive, even powerful. The call from Jaewon came on a Tuesday evening as Jisoo was leaving the office. "You think you're so clever with your charity projects," his voice dripped with contempt. "But we both know it's all an act. Wait until everyone sees who you really are." Jisoo's hand tightened on her phone. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The parking garage suddenly felt too empty, too exposed. "Your perfect new life with Sungjae," Jaewon sneered. "I wonder what the board would think if they knew about why. Our past mistakes? The real reason you left your last job?" The threat was clear, even if his accusations were fabricated. Sungjae found her still standing in the parking garage, visibly shaken. Without hesitation, he led her back to his office, listening intently as she recounted the conversation. His expression hardened with each detail. "Enough is enough," he declared, pulling out his laptop. "I've been gathering evidence of his harassment. But there's more." He turned the screen toward her, revealing a folder of documents. Jaewon's been involved in corporate espionage. He's been selling company secrets to competitors. The revelation stunned Jisoo. "How did you find this?" she asked, scanning the emails and financial records on the screen. "I had our security team investigate after the social media incidents," Sungjae explained. "His threats against you led us to something much bigger. He's been doing this for years, even before you dated him." Over the next few hours, Sungjae laid out his strategy to expose Jaewon's corruption. The evidence was comprehensive: unauthorized bank transfers, confidential information leaks, and documented threats against multiple employees. But why go through all this trouble? Jisoo asked, overwhelmed by Sungjae's efforts to protect her. Sungjae's expression softened. "Because you deserve justice, and he needs to be stopped. But more than that." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I care about what happens to you, Jisoo, more than I probably should." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Jisoo felt her heart race, not from fear this time, but from something else entirely. Later that night, during a quiet dinner in his office as they finalized their strategy, Jisoo finally voiced her deepest fear. "What if he's right? What if I'm not as strong as everyone thinks I am?" Sungjae set down his chopsticks, looking at her intently. "Strength isn't about never feeling fear," he said. "It's about facing it anyway. Every time you walk into this office, every project you pour your heart into, every person you help, that's strength." His words wrapped around her like a protective shield, pushing back the doubt that Jaewon's call had triggered. "I need you to know something," Sungjae continued. "Whatever happens with this situation, whatever he tries to do, you're not alone anymore." The simple declaration carried more weight than any elaborate promise could have. In that moment, Jisoo realized that somewhere along the way, Sungjae had become more than just her boss or mentor. He had become her anchor in the storm. The news hit like a thunderbolt. Jaewon had applied for a senior position at their design firm through a subsidiary company. Jisoo discovered this while reviewing incoming applications for the creative department. Her hands trembled as she read his name on the application. "He's trying to get inside," she told Sungjae, bursting into his office without knocking. Jaewon submitted his application through Vision Design Group. Sungjae's expression darkened as he reviewed the document on his tablet. "He's getting desperate," Sungjae observed, his voice calm but tight. This is actually good news. Desperate people make mistakes. He pressed his intercom, summoning the head of HR and their legal team for an emergency meeting. The next few days became a careful dance of strategy and preparation. Sung-jae announced a press conference to address the growing rumors and allegations circulating in the industry. The official reason: to discuss the company's successful community outreach programs. The real purpose: to set a trap. As the media gathered in the company's main conference hall, Jisoo watched from backstage as Sung-jae commanded the room. His presence was magnetic as he detailed their recent charitable initiatives, specifically highlighting Jisoo's contributions without mentioning the controversy. Our success comes from fostering talent and maintaining integrity, Sung-jae declared to the assembled reporters. Recent attempts to undermine our employees through defamation will not be tolerated. The door at the back of the hall burst open. Jae-won strode in, his expensive suit and confident smirk a stark contrast to the chaos he intended to create. Integrity, he called out loudly. Let's talk about integrity. Security moved to intercept him, but Sung-jae raised his hand, stopping them. Actually, let's talk about integrity, Mr. Kim Jae-won. We have some interesting documents to share about yours. Jisoo stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding but her step steady. The crowd of reporters turned to watch her, cameras flashing. She took her place beside Sung-jae, feeling his supportive presence beside her. Before you continue, Jae-won, she spoke clearly into the microphone, you should know that we have evidence of your corporate espionage activities spanning the last 5 years. Jae-won's smirk faltered. Behind him, 2 police officers entered the hall quietly. Sung-jae clicked to the next slide, displaying documented proof of Jae-won's illegal activities. Your attempts to discredit Ms. Park led us to discover your larger scheme, Sung-jae announced. The authorities have been quite interested in our findings. As the officers approached Jae-won, his composure cracked. You can't prove anything, he shouted, but his voice held a note of panic. Jisoo, you know me. You know I would never. That's exactly the problem. Jisoo interrupted, her voice strong. I do know you, and I'm not afraid of you anymore. The press conference turned into breaking news as Jae-won was escorted out. Reporters clamored for statements, but Jisoo felt strangely calm. Standing beside Sung-jae, facing down her tormentor, she realized she had finally reclaimed her power. A week after the press conference, Jisoo and Sung-jae visited one of their community projects in a struggling neighborhood of Seoul. The community center they were helping rebrand served as a haven for domestic abuse survivors. As they walked through the facility, Jisoo watched children playing in the newly decorated playroom she had designed. This is real impact, Sung-jae said, observing a group of women attending a job skills workshop in a room brightened by Jisoo's motivational wall designs. Your work gives these people hope. A middle-aged woman approached them, introducing herself as Mrs. Kim, the center's director. Since your redesign and marketing campaign, our attendance has doubled, she explained, showing them through the facility. Women who were afraid to seek help before are now finding their way to us. The success of the project touched Jisoo deeply. Here, surrounded by others who had faced their own battles with trauma and betrayal, she felt a profound connection. These women's stories of resilience reflected her own journey. Later that evening, as they sat in Sung-jae's office reviewing the day's observations, Jisoo finally opened up completely about her experience with Jae-won. It wasn't just the cheating, she admitted, her voice quiet but steady. It was the way he made me doubt everything about myself. Every decision, every accomplishment. He had a way of making it seem meaningless. Sung-jae listened intently, his usual businesslike demeanor softened by concern. Emotional manipulation leaves deeper scars than physical wounds, he said. But look at what you've built from those scars. You've turned pain into purpose. As they talked, news came through that Jae-won had been officially terminated from his previous company following the evidence of his corporate espionage. However, the victory felt hollow when Jisoo received another anonymous message, clearly from him. You might have won this round, but I'm not finished. He still thinks he has power over you, Sung-jae observed, reading the message over her shoulder. But he's wrong. Everything you've accomplished. Here, the community projects, the rebranding successes, The lives you've touched, that's all you. He can't take that away. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from the legal team. They had discovered that Jaewon had been systematically gathering personal information about Jisoo's family members, planning to use it as leverage. Rather than feeling afraid, Jisoo felt a surge of anger. "He's not just attacking me anymore," she said, her voice firm. "He's threatening innocent people who have nothing to do with this." Sung-jae reached across the desk, taking her hand. "Then we'll protect them too," he promised. "Your family, the community center, everyone. We're in this together." That night, leaving the office, Jisoo realized how much had changed. The woman who had once frozen at the sight of her boyfriend with another woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had learned that vulnerability could coexist with strength. The family gathering where Jisoo planned to confront Jaewon took place at her parents' traditional Hanok house in Bukchon. She chose this setting deliberately, a place where she had always felt safe, surrounded by people who truly knew her character. Jaewon arrived uninvited, as she had expected, during the celebration of her father's birthday. The family members tensed at his appearance, but Jisoo remained calm. Sung-jae stood quietly in the background, present at her invitation but letting her handle the situation. "You're not welcome here," Jisoo stated firmly, meeting Jaewon in the courtyard. Her voice carried across the traditional garden, steady and clear. "Whatever you're planning, it ends today." Jaewon's response was to pull out his phone, displaying a series of doctored photos, images that appeared to show Jisoo in compromising situations with Sung-jae at various company events. "It would be a shame if these went viral," he threatened, his smile cold. "What would your traditional family think?" But before he could continue, Sung-jae stepped forward, his own phone in hand. "Interesting timing," he said calmly. "Our tech team just traced the source of those manipulated images. The metadata tells quite a story." Jisoo watched as Jaewon's confidence wavered. Sung-jae continued, "We have proof of when and where these photos were altered. The software used, the exact time stamps, even the computer ID." Each word landed like a precise blow. "You're bluffing," Jaewon sputtered, but his hand holding the phone trembled slightly. "Am I?" Sung-jae questioned, pulling up detailed technical reports on his tablet. "The same evidence that exposed your corporate espionage led us to this. Every manipulated image, every false story, every threat, we have it all documented." Jisoo stepped closer to Jaewon, her voice low but firm. "You can release those photos. Go ahead. But know that the moment you do, we release everything. Every illegal activity, every manipulated image, every threatened message. Is that really what you want?" The confrontation drew the attention of her family members, who gathered at the edges of the courtyard. Jisoo felt their presence, like a protective wall behind her. Her mother stepped forward, speaking in the stern voice Jisoo remembered from childhood. "My daughter has shown more strength than you could understand," she declared, standing beside Jisoo. "Leave our family alone." The combined force of Jisoo's confidence, Sung-jae's evidence, and her family's support finally cracked Jaewon's facade. He looked around the courtyard, seeing only determined faces, and realized he had lost his power to intimidate. As security guards Sung-jae had quietly arranged escorted Jaewon from the property, Jisoo felt a profound sense of closure. The man who had once seemed so powerful now looked small and desperate. The final confrontation took place in the company's main conference room, where months earlier Jisoo had first presented her in a body. This time, she stood before a different audience, board members, legal representatives, and police officers. "We've gathered conclusive evidence," Jisoo began, her voice steady as she addressed the room. "Not just of the harassment, but of systematic corporate espionage and fraud." She clicked through a presentation displaying emails, bank transfers, and altered documents that created a damning picture of Jaewon's activities. Sung-jae stood beside her, adding, "Mr. Kim's actions weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a calculated scheme to undermine not just Ms. Park, but our entire company's integrity." Jaewon, seated across the table with his lawyer, attempted one last desperate play. "This is nothing but a vindictive attack," he declared, standing abruptly. "Jisoo is trying to destroy my reputation because she couldn't handle a simple breakup." The room fell silent as Jisoo pulled up her final piece of evidence, a recorded conversation between Jaewon and his accomplice, discussing their plans to sabotage major company projects. The recording had been obtained legally through the company's security protocols. A simple breakup? Jisoo's voice cut through the silence. "You systematically attempted to destroy my career, threaten my family, and compromised corporate security for your own gain. This isn't about our relationship, it's about your crimes." As the recording played, Jaewon's face drained of color. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, but the damage was done. The board members exchanged grave looks, and the police officers began taking notes. In a last, desperate move, Jaewon turned to the board. "Everything I did was for the benefit of the company. Sungjae's leadership is weak. His focus on community projects and social responsibility is destroying our profit margins. I was trying to save us." Sungjae stepped forward, his expression stern but controlled. "Our profits have increased by 30% since implementing Jisoo's community engagement initiatives. Our client base has expanded, and our reputation has never been stronger. Your actions weren't about helping the company, they were about control." The police moved forward as Jaewon's lawyer advised him to remain silent. The board members began filing out, their decision clear. As Jaewon was escorted from the room, he locked eyes with Jisoo one last time, but found no fear in her gaze. After everyone left, Jisoo remained in the conference room, looking out over the Seoul skyline. Sungjae joined her quietly. "You did it," he said softly. "You stood your ground." "We did it," she corrected him, turning to face him. "I couldn't have done this alone." The revelation about Jaewon's accomplice came during the final preparations for Jisoo and Sungjae's wedding. Minho, a senior designer who had always been supportive of Jisoo's work, was discovered accessing restricted company files late one night. Security footage showed him copying confidential information about upcoming projects and client lists. When confronted by IT security, they found extensive communication between him and Jaewon dating back months before Jisoo's promotion. "I suspected someone was helping him," Sungjae confided to Jisoo in his office. "The information Jaewon had was too specific, too internal. But I never imagined it would be Minho." He pulled up emails showing years of collaboration between the two men. Jisoo sat heavily in her chair, processing the betrayal. Minho had been one of the first to congratulate her on her promotion, had supported her community projects, had even defended her when the rumors started. He played his role perfectly, she realized aloud. "Shungzia not that girl, Lily. They've been sabotaging projects for years, selling information to competitors. Your promotion threatened their operation because you started noticing discrepancies in project timelines." The pieces fell into place. Why certain projects had mysteriously failed. Why competitors always seemed one step ahead. Why Jaewon had been so desperate to discredit her. She had unknowingly been getting too close to their scheme. Rather than confront Minho immediately, Sungjae proposed a different approach. "Let's use this," he suggested. "The wedding is in 3 days. Everyone will be there, including the board members and key clients. It's the perfect opportunity to expose everything." The wedding day arrived, the grand hall of the Joseon Palace Hotel filled with guests. During the traditional ceremony, everything proceeded as planned. It wasn't until the reception that Sungjae took the microphone for what guests assumed would be a typical wedding speech. "Today isn't just about celebrating love," he began. "It's about truth." The screens around the hall lit up with evidence of Minho and Jaewon's conspiracy. Minho, seated among the guests, tried to leave, but found security blocking his exit. Jisoo joined Sungjae at the podium, her wedding hanbok making her look both traditional and powerful. "For years, our company has been undermined from within," she addressed the shocked audience. "Today, that ends." As Minho was escorted out, the evidence of his crimes displayed for all to see, Jisoo and Sungjae turned to each other. "This wasn't quite the wedding celebration I imagined," she said with a small smile. "No," Sungjae agreed, taking her hand. "It's better." We're starting our life together with complete honesty. No more shadows. The reception continued, transforming from a simple celebration into a statement of triumph. Clients and board members approached them with renewed confidence in the company's leadership. The exposure of the conspiracy had strengthened, not weakened, their position. As they danced later that evening, Jisoo reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From discovering Jaewon's betrayal to finding strength in her work, from fighting back against harassment to uncovering a corporate conspiracy, every step had led to this moment. Ready for whatever comes next? Sung-jae asked softly as they swayed to the music. Jisoo looked up at him, seeing not just her husband but her partner in every sense. With you? Always. The story ends with them surrounded by friends and colleagues, their personal and professional lives intertwined in the best possible way. The shadows of the past had been transformed into stepping stones toward a brighter future, proving that sometimes the hardest challenges lead to the most beautiful destinations.